Hello everyone, so in this video I'm going to do just a brief introduction on heat. You do not need to take any notes as you watch through this video, but definitely make sure that you have it around so that way you can refer back to it if you have any questions on what is discussed here. So very quickly, when we're talking about heat, we're actually talking about the flow of energy from something that's warm to something that's cooler. We can find heat anywhere. Anything that's matter happens to have heat energy. Thermal energy is the result of the movement of tiny particles in matter, and it can be transferred from one object to another. So when we're talking about particles, you mean things like atoms or molecules or ions. And when we're talking about matter, we mean solid, liquids, or gases. So just as a quick example, so if we think about a cube of ice, an ice cube actually does have heat energy, so does a glass of lemonade. And we know that if you put the ice in the lemonade, that the ice is going to cool the lemonade down to make the lemonade colder because of the ice. So what's actually happening here is the ice is being heated up by the lemonade. Eventually, as we all know, we've had drinks like this before, the ice melts and the lemonade and the water are now the same temperature. When this happens, it has reached something called thermal equilibrium, which means both substances are now the same temperature. So I mentioned before that thermal energy has to do with the movement of particles in matter. So what exactly does matter and particles, what exactly am I talking about there? So matter is all around us. Anything that has mass, volume, or takes up space is something that has matter. It can exist in a couple of different phases, such as liquids, solids, and gases. All right. Matter is then made up of smaller particles called atoms that are constantly in motion, and they're constantly bumping into each other. They're vibrating back and forth. And this vibration, this motion of that the particles have is what causes thermal energy. And so here what you can see in this picture is we have solid, which are these represented by these particles, these balls, and they're packed very tightly together. In the liquids, we can see that they're more spread out. And if the gas, we can see that they're even more spread out. And the arrows tells us that it's also moving very rapidly around. All right, so as I mentioned before, with a solid, the particles are packed tightly and they can only really vibrate when they're in a solid. With liquids, the particles vibrate, but they can move around by either rolling or sliding around each other. And with gases, the particles move freely, but rapidly and randomly. Anytime that we're adding more energy, and by this, when I mean energy here, I mean anytime we add more heat, the matter is changing from a solid, more heat turns it into a liquid, and more heat to that makes it into a gas. So there we have it. Just a brief introduction on heat and how the motion of particles can cause things like thermal energy.